This chapter really just covers about how you pass data from one page to another page in a website. Okay? Because we know that HTML is a stateless document, right? So the HTTP protocol is stateless. What that means is the data that you contain or you create or you generate or receive on that page cannot be passed over to the next page or any other pages. So how do you solve that issue, right? So there are several methods how you can do that, and one of them is basically by using hidden forms, hidden elements in the form to capture those data, and then you pass those data over to another form, okay? And then you will get those data from the query string. So the query string is an object in the DOM that you can actually access, and so we'll see what that looks like. Seen it before already, I'm pretty sure. So a query string looks like this. Okay, it's in the URL part right here, and then so basically it's the thing that comes after that question mark, or actually including the after the question mark. So that is the query string. Okay, it's a name value key or pairs or key value, or sometimes it's called a token. If you heard the term URL token, it refers exactly to that, because you have a key value pair, key equals value. So it comes in this format. And it always usually follows after the first question mark. Okay, the question mark is right after the file or the directory. If there is a, depending on how you set up your page, sometimes you won't even see a file name at all. You will see something like just like that, and followed by a question mark, and then a list of key value pairs. Okay, what that means is that file in here, whatever that is, sometimes you can't know, sometimes you can. It could be a hidden file because it's a default file, like an index, or because you own the server or you control the server, you can actually set the default file for that directory. It could be like, my special page.php or something, and then because it's a default file, you don't have to reference it in the URL. Okay. So, but usually you'll see something like this. Okay, so you append, you can code it directly in a link like this. So if you were to include that part of the URL, then you can pass this over to, let's say, this page called process.php. Okay, so you write it, you will append the data here. Like this, and then when I process the file, click this link, then it's going to pass this data over in the query string, and then in that file, the process.php can access those data and then do something with those data. Okay, and then you will separate each pair with the ampersand. If you don't do that, then if you do something like like that, or something, not that, with a plus or something else besides the ampersand, then it will treat that the whole thing here is actually the value of the user ID. So just want to make sure if you do it manually, you want to place that with the ampersand. However, if you put the data in the form, and then when you click submit in your form, then all these input fields, okay, will be processed and then will be automatically generated by the submit button method there. So you don't have to do that manually yourself. It would do that automatically for you. So every field you have here, even though they have, whether or not they have data or not, it will still be sent over. And then if there's no content, then it'll be just blank like that. Okay, and then if you have a third one, you just add a third one there, and then you keep going. Okay, that format. So always have a key value pair. The only one that I would say that maybe that may not pass over is if you have a checkbox. If there's a checkbox, and if that checkbox doesn't, it's not checked, then I think, if I'm not mistaken, that will be ignored by the form, and it won't pass over to the other to the receiver. So when you have that kind of situation, you want to make sure you have a default, some type of default value in there if that's important. Okay. Otherwise, use the radio checkbox. And so, if I were to submit this form, and then you will see something like this in the URL. Again, this pink part here, just to show you what that will look like. Actually, here it's incorrect. There should be a 0 here, not a B. A B is a plus, I think. So it will be 0. The 0 means the %20. That's the encode or escape code or the Unicode for a space. Okay, you see that all the time in the URL up here. It's very common, and it's just a secure way of escaping your character so that it doesn't get processed any data. But you will see that it's very common. And once you submit this in the query string, then you can access these data. Okay, so this entire string is a single string. It's not an object of any sort, it's just a string of text. And you can access that using the search property of the location object. So you have the window, that location, and that can actually capture that data there. Okay, so just to illustrate that, let me go ahead and open this file, just a browser, just test this, and use the F12 key. Okay, so if I go ahead and type in the location, right, that's part of the window object. So location gives me this. So you can see that it has a search, it's a hash, search, the path, the port, and many more. If you click on this arrow here, you'll see a whole bunch of properties that comes with this location object. And the query string is attached to the search property. Okay, so that's what you want to grab. So if I were to go in here and say, close this, so you can access the searches by going to location .search, okay, and that will return that query string. As you can see, it has including the question mark, and it has a key value pair. Okay. So that's, I don't see here, but that's what you'll see. And then once we see that data, how do you parse it? Okay, parsing is basically just extracting the data from that string, and we learned how to use string methods last week, and also the arrays and those functions you can use to split and splice and slice your strings and so forth. So if you know those functions, you know those methods, then you can easily extract a piece of string from there. Okay, I do have an example here as well to show you. So the first thing is you would use one of these steps here. The book probably mentions you use a substring, which is fine, but I just showed you can actually have other options as well. Okay, you can use the slice or the split as well. The split, remember the split returns an array, whereas the slice and this substring returns a new string, okay, of that string. So let's just say that we have this string here. Okay, but I'm just going to copy this so we can just going to test it here. Okay, let's just say that I have the string of that. Let me wrap this. Assume that that's my string that is part of the URL, right? The query string. And to get that string, then actually let me look at something more. We've got the whole thing. Let's just say the whole thing. But usually you will see the whole thing there. For string, assume that that's the URL, okay? That's the URL. And then when you do the location.search, it will ignore everything here, and then it just remove everything here, and then you will get just this part after the including the question mark, right? So that's what you get, something like this. And then once you do the if I do string is equal to location dot search, okay, you'll see that returns that portion of that string. And so in that case, it will look something like this. So let's just replace this with that, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So you get something like that in return. Okay. So now, how do you extract that? Okay, so you extract that by just capturing only this part after the question mark and everything afterwards. Okay. So the one method is to use the substring. I can say var s1. You can say the string of that string, get the substring. Okay, starting at the first position. So we skip the first character, which is 0. So, and then we don't put anything after that. That means it keeps everything from here to the end of that string, right? So it should return the entire string now without the question mark. Okay, the question mark is not important. So now you can see a pattern there, right? So you have the key value pair. Okay, and then the next thing is you want to break it by removing the ampersand here. So this is one part, right? This is another part. So you see the pattern, and then from here you can use that split to split that ampersand, and then you return a collection or an array of elements inside an array. Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3 elements here. Just to show you that this is how you get that string. One way. The other way is, as you can see, the string is still intact, right? We didn't touch this original string at all. So the other way is to use the slice. Slice works kind of the same way. Slice is you pick a location in the string, and then you can pick a maximum of character string, right? When you want to stop, how many characters you want. If you want everything in the string, then just leave the second parameter blank, right? From the position all the way to the end of the string. And that's how you will use it with this slice. So that's the original string. Let's just say that I want S2 to be sString.slice. Okay, starting again with the first position, right? We're ignoring that, the index of 1. The question mark is index 0, so to skip that, we start at the first position of the 1, and then we're going to go all the way to the end. If I put only 5, right, you see the S2 returns only 5 to the 5th position. Okay, the index position. So if you want everything, then you just basically remove that second parameter, and it will grab everything from there, from the first index all the way to the end of the string. So you return the same thing as S1. So the S1 also has the same value. Okay? And then the third way is to use a split. So again, str is that. Then I would say var s3 is split, string 2, string split. Split where, right? So you want to split at the question mark character. So you break this into 2. If I do this, so really what you get is an array of 2 elements. This is one of them, the one before that, and then this is the rest of the element. And S3 gives me 2 elements because the one before that is blank, and then we have the rest of that. The whole chunk of string here is 1 element. So now you got an array. What you want is actually the string. So basically, you can do that. After this, you can say again, S3 is equal to S3 of sub 1, right? And then now you see the S3 has just that part. Okay? That's doing like 2 steps. Or you could say, go back here. I just want the split from that question mark, and I want the second part. And then again, if you do that, just say I want to put it as 4 so you can see it. Okay, and you just basically remove one step so you can get that string much quicker. Okay, so now I have that string. And then how do you grab each of those key value pairs? Okay, and then you do another split. So from here, I could choose either one of those. S1, 2, and 3 should all be the same, right? S4. Yeah, I see. No, I think one of them is not the same. Oh, forgot what I did. But so let's just say that is the final string now. Not final, but we took up the question mark, and I want to extract each of those key value pair. So we use, and the easiest way in this case would be the split, because it will locate a particular character, any character or any pair you want, and split at that location, and it will ignore that character, right, or that group of characters, and then I'll return an array of that string. So I can say now, we'll just put, let's see, data, just say var data is equal to S1, the split. I want to split at the ampersand character, right? So when I do this, I'm expected to get 1, 2, and then 3 parts. So 3 elements. And it will return an element of array of 3 elements. So here it is. But this is still in just one single element. Okay? And then you have to go one more step, right? You have to break that into each piece. You can get the actual value out of that. Okay, so how do we split each of these into their own part? Let me clear this up. So data is that if I want to get Clark's name, right? Or if you also want to get the key, which is the F name, then you can also do that too. So now you have to reference each of these elements here, and usually you can use a loop to do that, right? Loop through every element, and then again split it, okay? Split it into another array, and so you have that particular value. Or you can just say if you want to get just the key or the value pair, it doesn't matter from here. If you don't want to bother going a step further, you can say if I want to get Clark's name, then you would do just say var name is equal to the data, right? The first element, which is 0, okay? That will get the full F name is equal to Clark. But I want to split at the equal sign, right? When you split, you get an array. In this case, an array of 2 elements. If you just want the name, then you want the second part, right? You follow? Yeah, so if you know this way, then you can see that you can do this in one step, and name should return Clark. Okay? And this way, again, you're not actually changing the actual data inside the data. It will still be as it was. But if you want to change it, then you will have to extract that out or rewrite the whole data and then split the entire element into each own part. And then you can reconstruct it back instead of just equal sign. F name equal Clark, you can say, you can split that into something like, say it will look something like maybe an object of F name and then Clark, right? Or name, and then so on. So you can turn into something like that. Once it's in this state, then it's much easier to access because now it's an object, right? So, I mean, the goal will be to do something like that because you have the key value pair, and it's so much easier. Except that you see the superhero, you still have the $20. That's what you want. So you want something like data to D2 to be something like that. That's what you want in the end. Because so now I can easily access, job and then name and so on. That's what you want to do. So just take another step to loop through the array and then process it by using this split method and then assign that to a new array of objects, right? Literal objects before. Okay, so one thing is about this $sign here. If I go back here, so all these special characters you see here, the $sign, the percent, or any $signs, or any of these special characters you put in here, can also be decode and also encode. Okay, if the two built-in functions you can use, the encode URI component and decode. So if you use decode, encode, and you can decode it back. Okay, so when you want to send some data to the browser or to another page, then you want to encode it, okay, so that those don't contain any. It will force any special characters to be in a UTF encoding character. So it's much safer that way than having it as a script. Sometimes you will see that as a script and it can run on the browser, so you don't want to do that. And this is one of those times why you need to encode your characters. So there are two back-to-back. You have the encode URI component, and then to decode that you will use the decode URI component. And you also have another one called just encode URI, and then there's also a decode URI as well. And the difference is basically just the number of characters or that these two functions either convert or not convert. Okay, so the encode URI component will not convert these. These are the characters that will not convert, so they will ignore those. If you have any of those in the URL, it will just keep them as is, right? Any alphanumeric characters, the dash, underscore, the dot, and any of these here. And the URI encode, you just have a little bit more characters to ignore. So you can see that it has like this one here, the comma, the slash, the question mark, and few of those. Okay, so depending on how you want to send this over, but so you want to convert it back to the usual ASCII characters, you can read them. Otherwise, you'll see something like this, and it's really hard to read. Okay. So let's say go back here. If you have, it doesn't have to be just in the URL, just any string, basically any text, if you want to encode it. So if I have a string that has ABC pound 123 star 5, right? And you can put maybe even a $sign in there. Okay, if that is the string. And if you want to encode that, then you can say var string encode, a new string. I want to do a encode. So you have two of them. You can try the URI first, and then encode a string. Okay, and you can see what that looks like. String encode. So pretty much nothing has changed here. I have the pound sign, the star, and the $sign. So if you look here, it says the pound sign, $sign, pound sign, and star. So they're all ignored by the URI encode. Okay? So nothing changed there. Let's try the other one. If I go back here, and I'm going to put a component here. I'll change this to encode 2. Okay, so if I type in string encode 2, okay, you see that it makes some changes. Let me go back up there to the original one. This is the original string. So it modified the pound sign to that character, always 2 character. Okay, the percent plus 2 characters to encode 1 character, and then you have 1, 2, 3. That's this one here. The star remains intact because the star is up here. It doesn't do anything to that. We ignore that, and then the $sign here is encoded into 24. Okay, and then to get this back, because now if I type in, if you don't know what that is, right, you can always get it back by use the decode. So decode your component, and then put the string encode 2 in there, and then it will return that back, okay, into its original form. So when you get something like that in the URL, then you always want to decode it back. So it will convert all the escape characters, all these reference characters back to its original in strings. Okay, so that's pretty much what you need to do when you parse strings from the URL or from any data that you have. Okay, so that's that. So the next one here is by using the heading form fields, and you use that to store data from one form, so you can pass those data to another form. This is like, for example, if you have a application of some sort and you require like a step-by-step process, right? So first you put your user information. Once you get that, and then you pass the data to page 2 maybe to get their I don't know, maybe if it's a job application, you ask for that like education background, you keep those data there. You pass to page 3, maybe for employment. Okay, so by the end of that last page, you have all these data all together, and you would do that by every phase. So the phase 1, the first page is basically just their information. So this will be the data that will be coming from the first page, right? You are storing the username, the email, phone address, city, state, zip. So you pass this data coming over in the form of a query string. So you get that from the query string, you parse it into each individual piece, and then you will attach it to an input field called hidden type. So it's not visible on the form. Okay, it's just that the user does not need to see it. I mean, you can still see it. You do source view, you'll see it in the source view, but it's not visible in the form. And then because it's an input, when you submit that new form, all of these will be also passed along to the third form, right? And this will be part of that query string as well. Just I think it's longer and longer. Okay, it depends on what method you use. Is it a get or a post method, right? And then so you just basically get the value here. Notice here I didn't put any value, but you will have a value here somewhere, say, so default value you would put in here, like maybe a, so you would do this with JavaScript, right, to get the data in there, so you can get the value. And this part is usually, you complete this with JavaScript. You can get the query string and put the data there. You can't do this manually. I mean, unless, you know, if it's a form 2, 3, 4 on the site, you can't do it manually. You have to do it with JavaScript. So you can attach this inside the script, using like create element, create the attribute of value, assign that to that string. Okay, and we'll see how that's done in a minute here, but that's one way you pass that over. And then another way is, probably the more efficient way, is by using cookies. Okay, cookies are just basically a little tiny piece of data up to about 4 kilobyte size. As you can see some stats here. It's really tiny. So you have a cookie can have up to only 4K. Okay, so if you have one cookie file and that cookie stores that much data already, then you're done. You cannot create any more cookies at all. Okay, so very tiny. And then one domain. So cookies are restricted to per domain. So for example, on that GTC, for example, only has that many cookies you can set, up to about 50 cookies. This one depends, varies on the browser. Some has more. Some, like I think Safari's, like Firefox might have like up to 150 cookies. Chrome might have only 50. So it depends what type of browser you have. But usually it's about around 50 cookies. Okay, so one cookie can store a piece of data or a piece of a lot of data. Okay, and again, cookies are stored in the form of a key value pair. Same thing. So you can have 20 cookies as long as the total size of the cookies is less than 4K. Okay, if it's more than that, then all those others will be truncated, ignored. They will not get stored. So that's the limitation you have. Okay, you can have 50 cookies, and if they're less than that, then you're okay. Okay. So use cookies to do a lot of things. Okay, I put the pros and cons in here, but mainly for session management, because again, HTTP is stateless. You log in, you use shopping carts, you've seen that before. Keep a score for your games or whatever you need to do there, right? You go from one page to another page to another page. You can set in cookies. Personalization is really big. You see that all the time. You go to Amazon, once you sign in, all the preferences you set came back to where it was before. Or you can set a theme so that you always have that color theme, whatever it is. And also, the big thing is tracking. See, the tracking is used all the time. You search for something, you search for brownies on Google, and you see that if you go to Facebook or something, you see all the brownie ads shown everywhere, right? Because they track all your activities. And that's how they use it, right? Cookies. So the pros and cons in here. I just want to point out some important ones. The legacy support. Okay, this is good because all browsers support cookies. It's way back in the 90s. So it's been around for a long time. It's still going to be around for, I'm pretty sure, in the future. So you don't have to worry about which browser supports which one doesn't. It's easy to control, and it has an expiration date. Right? You can set the expiration date so that this cookie can only exist within a certain time. You can set it to infinity, right? So there's no expiration date at all until the user deletes it or you delete it yourself if that person comes back to your site. Okay. It also has a security cookie flag you can set so that that cookie can only be accessed and retrieved from the HTTPS protocol. So if the browser is not in HTTPS like you see up here, then you cannot retrieve the cookie, which is a little bit more secure. Okay. But nonetheless, cookies are saved inside a local file inside your computer. Okay, so it's a tiny file. Usually, it will only be retrieved by the site or the domain that created that cookie. So you can't go to Google and Google expect to pull your cookie out of your computer. There's always ways around it, I'm sure. That's what hackers do. But typically, that's what happens. Okay, so only the site or the domain that created it can only retrieve that cookie. And then the cons is too small. Okay, it's very difficult to parse, as you can see, because it's a string. Right, it's a long string of data, and to get just one piece, you have to chop the string into small pieces to grab the right information. So that's very tedious work. And if you have a lot of cookies, okay, cookies are sent by every request. Right, when you load a page, it reads the cookies. Every page you go to does it all the time. So if you are really heavily with cookies, then you can cause some performance, especially if you're running on a mobile site. Okay, so that's not really efficient also. So also privacy, security is always, all the time. Privacy is that advertisers can track you. That's why if you go to, just mentioned about searching for brownies, right? They can track you. Because those sites, they share your information with Google. Google share with their third party, so they can track you. Although we don't want to stop it. And then also security, because there's always, a way around that, and people can actually, or hackers can get into your cookies, and it's not very secure because some sites, this would be a very bad idea, but some sites will actually store your emails and the passwords in that cookie. I mean, I hope they never store credit card, but if they do, that's very, very bad, because a hacker can get into your cookie file and steal this information. Okay, so if you don't trust the site, after you're done with the site, always go to your browser and delete the cookies. Okay. So here's the anatomy of the cookie. You have 5 fields to fill. The only required one is just the name and the value here. The name of the cookie, and then you give it a value. The 4 fields are all optional. If you don't put the expiration date, then that cookie will expire as soon as you close the browser or you leave that page. So it's almost like a session type of cookie. Okay, but so the important one is this one here, the name and the value. A name here is just any variable you want to call it. It could be like user, right? User is equal to what is that user name? Okay, or the value could be not just a single value. It could be in a string of like an array. Okay, so you can store that into an array of data. It could be something like this, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But it's still a string. It's just a string of data. But when you parse it, then you can parse it, and then you get, it's like an array of data. Okay? So you're not limited to just put one single value here. Expires is the date. Expires, you have a certain rule. You have to use that GMT date. There's a certain format. I forgot to put here, but which is maybe like the day of the month, and like tomorrow will be like Friday, so 3-character Friday. I think, I don't remember the format, but has a format. The day followed by the date. I have to look it up. Tomorrow is at 30, and then March 2018. Okay, so the day of the week, the actual date, the month, the year, and then the let's just say 12 hours, minute, second, and then GMT. So it always takes in that format. If you had it wrong, then usually it may or may not work. Okay, so usually keep it in that format. That's how you set your expiration date. And when that date arrives, then it will delete the cookie automatically. Domain, you can also set a domain here. If you don't put it there, it will always default to the original domain that you set, which is pretty straightforward. The path here is kind of important here. This is a scope of the cookie. That means that this cookie, if you put a path in here, let's just say I want this cookie to exist only when I go to a subdirectory, let's say on the shopping page, right? So if you want to put a path here, you could say something like path, and then you do here shopping. If you do that, then only inside the shopping page will this cookie be retrieved or be saved into. Okay? If you're outside of this directory, you cannot access the cookie. Okay, so you can set it so it's very specific to a certain directory, so you have a scope of that cookie. If you don't put it by default, it's available everywhere on the entire domain. Okay. Secure, if you have the keyword secure in there, then that cookie needs to be retrieved only when you have the HTTPS protocol. So it's encrypted. Okay, it's encrypted, it's secure, and you can't retrieve it if you don't use that HTTPS protocol. It will not be visible. It will be hidden completely. So to create a cookie, you can see that cookie will store in a name value pair. So it's 1 cookie, 2 cookies, and 3, and so on. So you're not going to have a separate cookie file. It's just one single cookie file or object, and it contains a string of cookies. Okay, and then you can still retrieve each cookie separately by referencing the name, if you know the name of the cookie and the value. So here is how you set a cookie. So I have a variable name called new cookie, have a name here, and the name is Christian, right? So the cookie name is this one here. Is the name. Okay, the value is Christian, but the actual cookie name is called name. I could call this a C. So the cookie name is C, right? It's the key. The key is the name, and the key has a value. So then I can save that cookie just by doing this command here. So document that cookie equals to that cookie name. Okay, I put a variable name. You could just put a whole string here. It's completely fine, like here. So instead of using the variable name, I could do wrap in a string, because it is just a string. Okay, so I have the cookie name as a value of my name. So if you want to put like you can say if you have more information here, you can say instead of that, you can say Christian, or you can say something. You can set that to array. You can say something like cookie would be maybe like user, for example. You can say ID is Christian. I put a comma here. Say maybe not that like an object, right? Christian. Let's say theme you chose is theme 1, or something like that, right? and that's a cookie. Cookie is user, and then you can have more user in there. You have to parse it into an object so you can access that data. Okay, and then you can check based on the theme here on this site, so that you will load that theme to the user when the user logs into your site. Right? So it knows what theme that user chose before. And then if you want to set a date, then you can set that date by issuing the expires equal and then that date format that I mentioned earlier. And you can always reset this cookie too. So let's just say that the next time the user comes in, and you can set it so it expires 6 months after. If the user doesn't come back during the 6 months period, then the cookie will be deleted. If the user comes back, then this cookie gets reset to another 6 months from that point on, right? So you always have the 6 month expiration date every time when the user comes in. You can reset this every time. To delete a cookie, there is no delete command. Okay, all you do is just basically set the expiration date to a time in the past. That's all you do. 3 seconds before, or a day before. Then the cookie is deleted from memory, deleted from the computer as well. So just make sure you know the cookie name, and then just set the expiration date to something in the past, and then we're done. And then once you run it, then it's deleted from the computer as well as from your site. Very, very simple. Okay, so the next one is local storage. This is for HTML5. So any browsers that do not support HTML5 cannot use this local storage in the session storage. These are stored directly on the browser itself. So I don't think they're. I think the local storage is actually a file inside the browser itself, but it's a little bit different for cookie. The only thing is that you have more files to write, more data to write, right? Instead of the 4K, you have 5 megabyte, almost like 10, 11 times more data. Okay, you have much more data. And then the data you pass into that is usually you can store into JSON data. So you can see it's very, very efficient. So it's an object type. Okay, because it's an object type, you can use the dot notation to get the data, right? And then And I guess the cons will be like some older browsers do not support it, but most browsers do now, except for IE9, 8, and so on. And it's because it's in a browser, it's also a session, so it's prone to cross-site scripting attacks. You hear that all the time. The access is for cross-site scripting, and they can inject some malicious code into your form, and then in that way, you can actually attack your site or steal your session. We call it session hijacking. That's what they do. They can hijack the session, and then from there on, their computer will be your computer because they don't know. The server will think their computer is yours because you have the same session. So when that happens, then they can access your information on the site. Yeah.
How do you protect against that? Is there other libraries you can call, or do you validate the data in the form?
Yeah, right. So you always validate the form. Actually parse all the input into escape every character with the escape function, so that every character comes in. Like usually when you have a form, the dangerous one is to write a script. We always put something like that as a JavaScript, right? So you parse it so that a character bracket will be something like in the form of something like that. So when we have it in that form, then it's no longer a script, so therefore it cannot run on your site. And you see that some developers don't even do that. Okay. It's not only prone to your session, but also if it's a form that is accessing your database, then there's another layer of security. You want to make sure you have the SQL injection as well. So that's some of the attacks they can do to damage your site. And also, there's no expiration date. There's never expiration date. As long as your computer is there, and if you mean the user, if the user does not clear the cache, then it will always be there. Okay? Because there's no expiration date. Unlike the cookies, those could be deleted. Okay, so the syntax for that is basically you can access this local storage by issuing that window, that local storage property. Okay, just like the location, you can access it with local storage like that. And you have two options: the session and the local storage. Session, it just means in the session only, right? So once you close the browser, then it's gone. Okay, it's deleted from memory, and you're done. All the data is lost. But if you put a local storage, then that persists throughout until you delete it yourself, or the site deletes it for you. Okay, because this is an object, then they have methods to set those for you. This is just one way. There's another way too, but this is probably more easier to understand. You can set items, and you can also get items. You have a setter and getter. Okay, so it also takes their key value pair, so the name of that session, local storage, and the value. Okay, this is a local storage session. The syntax is exactly the same. Again, the difference is one is inside the live session. One is it persists throughout the site. So I could say that I have a data, right? A, an object of A, 1, B, 1. It could be a score, or it could be anything. And let's do it this way. And you want to store that into as a JSON object, so you can retrieve it back as JSON data, and vice versa. Meaning you convert back to JSON, back to JavaScript object. Because right now this is an object. Okay, it's object. When you convert that into JSON string, then the JSON string will look something like this. Let's see. This is the object, right? And then if you put the JSON will look like kind of same, except everything will be string. JSON would be like you put that into okay, like that. And you have here A string A, everything's string. So we put that in here, 1, okay, and then B, and then 2. So it's just a string of data. It'll be single string here. So you convert into JSON like that. No, I don't like the quotes here, but so when you store it into your local storage, you want to convert into a string. So you use the JSON.stringify, right? String it, and then when you retrieve it back, you just make sure you know the name of your storage, local storage. You just say the local storage.get item, and then get that back, and then when it comes back, it will come in this string, and then you can go ahead and convert it back to object. So it will go back to something like this by using the JSON.parse function. Okay, so once you converted that to the object, and then now I can access the scores by just going scores.a and then scores.b, and gives me those values. And this will return 1, this will return 2, right? So it's much easier that way than the cookies. The cookies, you can't, because cookie doesn't have the JSON stringify option. I mean, you can convert into a JSON string first, and then save this into the cookie file as a value, and then you retrieve it back as a string, and you can still convert it back, but just take an additional step to do it. With this one here, it has a built-in function. You just do it, convert it very easily back and forth like that. So, okay, any questions before we take a break?
Real quick, you said that this isn't supported in all the browsers.
Mm-hmm.
What's considered a good browser?
Yeah, any browser that does not support HTML5. So usually IE8 lower doesn't support. So we always put IE8 because most other browsers are, HTML8 are all, modernized except for IE. I'm not sure why they still don't upgrade, but some people still use IE6. So you can see it's like back in the dinosaur age, but it's still there. So. Okay, so take a break. I'll see you back in 10 minutes.